Welcome back, and what a delight and an honor for us to have with us today Dr. Herb London. He's the president of the London Center for Policy Research and the co-author of the new book entitled The Encyclopedia of Militant Islam. And we're here to talk to him about a lot of things. Dr. London, good to see you, my friend. How are you today?
Good to be with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us. Well, a few things I want to get into, but first of all, the big story today, the $400 million for detainees. What's your thought on that one?
We have a policy in the United States of not paying a ransom for people who are taken hostage. It seems to me that we ought to live up to that policy provision. I am deeply disappointed with a lot that has occurred during the Obama administration, but this is yet another illustration that we are giving in to terrorists yet again.
It's an incredible violation of our policy, and it also suggests there's some money laundering going on. Is there any consequences to this?
Well, unfortunately, there aren't any consequences. One of the problems is that the president is engaged in activities through the Iran nuclear deal that clearly suggest there should be consequences. After all, you may remember the president sold the policy by suggesting there would be snapback, that is, a return to sanctions against Iran if there were violations. Well, we've had one violation after another almost every week, and yet the president hasn't responded. So yes, there are no ramifications to the actions that have been taken.
Well, it's just unbelievable. We could probably talk about that all day, but I want to come back to the Trump-Khan controversy. As you know, Mr. Khan got up during the Democratic National Convention and gave a speech alongside with his wife, but the backstory behind the Khan family is a whole nother thing that's now starting to be exposed. Was Trump right in saying what he did about the Khan family?
Well, let me express my view on this, because I think that there is a fundamental point that has to be made here. The Democrats put a mine right under the ground, and Donald Trump stepped on it. There are many things that you can say about the extremism in the Muslim community. There's a lot that you can say about immigration, but there is not one word you can utter about a mother who is grieving over the loss of a son who has given her life he's given his life in behalf of the United States of America. That was a foolish gesture on Donald Trump's part. It was stupid, and it clearly is what the Democrats are trying to do, to demonstrate that he is an unstable figure. This is not an argument over policy. The Democrats are not going to use the policy debate because they can't win on the policy debate. They're not going to win on the immigration issue. They're not going to win on the economic issues, and they're not going to win on the counterterrorism activities. Where they will win is to make Trump into a caricature of a political figure who is incapable of having his hands on the tiller and running the country. And this was a trap. And there is no doubt that Donald Trump, in my judgment, missed it completely.
Yeah, it seems to be pretty damaging. Out of this is coming the criticism that he is mentally unfit. So I guess that will be the new thing they jump on. But there is a backstory to the Khan family. Can you tell us what it is?
Well, in the case of the backstory, Mr. Khan obviously believes in Sharia. And in case of Sharia, it's a question of whether you're loyal to the precepts of Allah or whether you're loyal to the constitutional dictates of this country. And it seems to me when you have people who are involved in politics, they should be involved in the protection of the United States and our Constitution, not Sharia. You want to believe in Sharia, you can, but again, the Constitution and your loyalty to the United States should come first. Clearly, their son demonstrated that, sacrificed his life, but Mr. Khan does not. And it seems to me that what you have here is an a very complicated situation that should have been avoided by Donald Trump, as so many Republican leaders have indicated. Whether it's Paul Ryan or Newt Gingrich or Senator McCain, they've all made it clear. Stay away from an issue of this kind because you cannot win. Trump, I think, was overtaxed perhaps, but it seems to me that he's an attack dog. He's always in the attack mode. There are times when it's appropriate to remain silent and to recognize the fact that a trap has been set for you. Avoid it if you can, and you should.
Is it fatal, this one?
I don't think it's fatal. I think it'll pass in time, but I think in the next few days, there is no question that the media, which is an extension of the Democratic Party, are going to play this up to fare thee well. in large part because they're trying to demonstrate the fact that Trump is unsteady. As I said, they're not going to win this campaign on any other basis. They did it with Romney. If you may remember, in 2012, Romney was thought of as a person who was far more adept on economic issues than Obama, far more equipped to deal with foreign policy issues than Obama. But he was not as likable as Obama. And what was the characterization of Romney? A rich white guy who was out of touch with America, someone who lives in the stratosphere, who doesn't understand the views of the average guy, not the kind of guy you can sit down and have a beer with and discuss daily and personal matters. And that was the way in which the Democrats won this campaign. They didn't win it on policy issues. And they realized they're not going to win it on policy issues against Donald Trump. So what they do is they converted Donald Trump into a caricature of a political figure by making him appear unsteady, egotistical, out of control, and someone who is always in an attack mode.
Very insightful. It's also been said today that this mistake with Trump taking on the Khan family has preempted the ability for the Republicans now to go after Hillary's hypocrisy when it relates to Benghazi and standing in front of the families and in front of the caskets of the four fallen Americans and saying it was all a video. That this particular act of Trump maybe could preempt them claiming that ground.
I don't think so. My feeling is that the Republicans have to be just as clever in setting the traps for Hillary Clinton. The fact is that Ty Wood's father did write down exactly what Hillary Clinton said when the body of Ty Woods was brought to Andrews Air Force Base. And at that time, she said, "Your son will not have died in vain. We will make sure that the person who is responsible, namely the producer of a trailer on the Prophet Muhammad, will be brought to justice." That was an outright lie. And it was a lie that occurred during the point when a father is grieving over the death of his son. That cannot be forgiven. And it seems to me that the Republicans, if they play their cards properly, should be able to use that and use that and use that again. It was brought up during the Benghazi hearings, but it didn't get the kind of traction that one might have assumed because Hillary Clinton seemed unflappable, and she kept saying, "Oh, it's the fog of war." Fog of war? I'm sorry. That was not the fog of war. And I mean, she knew that it was not a spontaneous attack that occurred in Benghazi. It was a planned assault. So she lied, and that lie has hurt a lot of people and undoubtedly has led to the contractors who were there fighting for America to come to the realization that she is not a person who could be commander-in-chief of the United States forces.
All right. I will say to Trump's credit, he has talked a lot about the security and the safety of America as it relates to ISIS and the radical Islamic terrorists. And you heard nothing from the DNC during their convention. In fact, if anything, you heard no more war, no more war. In your writings and your research and your book, the Encyclopedia of Militant Islam, do you think the world is finally waking up to this, or are we still numb to this?
Look, we are at a very interesting moment in human history. We are fighting a long war, and all of the assumptions of the past, including the political assumptions that we've made about the United States, are no longer in play. This is a year like 1848, when you had the springtime of nations, and people were rebelling everywhere. And you see this across the globe. You see it with Hofer in Austria. You see it with Marine Le Pen in France. You see it, of course, in the United States. You saw it with the Brexit vote. So there is a fierce sense of rebellion across the continents. And it seems to me that what you have here in the United States is something on the same sort of order, where there are a lot of forgotten Americans who, recognizing the fact that technology has advanced us in many ways, but in some ways has left a very significant portion of the population behind. These are maybe a 55-year-old steelworker who has 2 children, and he's lost his job. What does he do now? Is he going to be retrained at 55? He's angry. He's resentful about what has happened to him and what has happened to his part of the economy. And there are many who fall into that category. So we are undergoing very significant change. This is a context for understanding the kind of war that we are fighting. We're fighting a war that will exist over 2 generations. We have to have Americans united, and we are not united. We're a divided nation. But we have to recognize the fact that even if there is not unanimity on issues, we do need this kind of unity. And the unity is important because we are going to be fighting this war over a long period of time. And what we've experienced in Orlando and San Bernardino and 9/11 and Chattanooga, we're going to be experiencing again. It's a question of how resolute we can be, how we can hold this nation together, and whether, in fact, there's a leadership in Washington that could provide the kind of guidance that the nation needs at this time.
Part of the pushback, Dr. London, is that the citizens seem to be waking up and getting it, but the politicians and the administration doesn't want to respond to that. That's part of the pushback. We're seeing it now. Look what's happened to Merkel's popularity in Germany just in the last week. Isn't that an indication that people want change?
I think there's no question about it. I think Merkel is undoubtedly in a kind of freeze mode. She does not understand what is happening in her own country. People are saying enough. There's a guy in Hamburg. He takes care of his family. He has 3 children. Does he want to pay the pensions for some guy in Greece who wants to retire at 55? Does he want another million migrants to come into his country and get onto the dole? He is saying enough. I'm paying taxes that are high enough. I'm willing to take care of my own family. I'm willing to pay a premium to live in Germany. But you have reached a point where I can no longer sustain the life that I really wanted. And so they're turning against Merkel. And there will be turning against many of the politicians in the United States, where you have a sentiment that is not entirely different, where people are saying you're bringing thousands of new immigrants into the United States. A tiny portion of them could conceivably be killers, be people who are related to ISIS and want to cause damage. What sense does that make? We understand compassion, but compassion has its limits as well.
Very well said. Let me take a quick break here, Dr. London. We'll be right back. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, you can go to londoncenter.org. That is his website, londoncenter.org. We'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Okay, welcome back, and what a delight and an honor to have with us today Dr. Herb London. He's the president of the London Center for Policy Research and the co-author of a new book entitled The Encyclopedia of Militant Islam. By the way, their website is londoncenter.org, londoncenter.org. By the way, Dr. London, is your book available at Amazon and the website?
Amazon. Thank you for the plug. I very much appreciate it.
Right, Amazon and your website, they can get the book, right? Okay. Well, listen, back to the Khan thing just for a moment. Mr. Khan said that terror has nothing to do with Islam. Your response?
Look, billion Muslims in the world. Most of these people are interested in taking care of their families, going to work. They're not harming anyone. There's a tiny portion that represent the militant Islamic view. And that militant Islamic view is very dangerous. It's true that most Muslims are not terrorists, but most of the terrorists are Muslim. And we have to recognize the fact that there is a relationship. The pious Muslim, the president of Egypt, a very pious Muslim, went to Al-Azhar, which is the theological center of Islam, and he gave a speech in which he said, there is violence within our religion. And at the end of the speech, he said, we should do something about it. We need, and I'm quoting him, a revolution from within, namely a reformist revolution from within. Those views were also echoed by the King of Bahrain and the King of Jordan. So we have allies. The question, however, is why didn't that speech receive any attention in the United States? Some might say it was as important as Martin Luther's 95 Theses. It was a speech that goes right to the heart of what we have to deal with in the 21st century. And that is, see the modifications that are necessary in Islam so we don't face this threat. And here is a pious Muslim who is willing to make not only that recommendation, but to act on it. And yet he's received scant attention. If I were President Obama, I would have invited President el-Sisi to the United States immediately. I would have made sure there was an editorial in every newspaper in the United States. Do you remember reading an editorial in the New York Times about it? Or the Wall Street Journal, or for that matter, any other newspaper or publication? So here we had a great opportunity and we lost it.
Well, that's the one that everybody's been waiting to hear, but you never heard of it. How bad is the civil war among them, let's say the Shiites and the Sunnis? I mean, doesn't that foster this problem?
Well, look, there's a schism that exists between Shia and Sunni. We've seen evidence of that. The putative leader of the Sunni world is the Saudis, and the putative leader of the Shia world is Iran. And there's no question about the tension between the two. But keep in mind, and people overlook this, Hezbollah and Hamas work together. One is Shia, one is Sunni. They both want to kill Jews in Israel. And so there's a very famous story in which two taxi drivers are on a one-lane highway and they're angry at one another. One says, "You pass," the other says, "No, you pass." And finally, one of the drivers gets out of his car, fist flailing. He sees Jews sitting in the back of that car. Instead of attacking the other taxi driver, he attacks the Jews. The other taxi driver says, "I'm going to go to your car." He goes to his car, and sure enough, coincidentally, there are Jews sitting in the back of that car. He beats up those Jews. What is the moral of this story? Shia and Sunni hate one another. They do not like one another. But they have one overarching goal, and that is to destroy Israel and the Jews of Israel. So they can certainly work together in many ways when their interests come together and collide.
That is well said. So how damaging has this administration been to our relationship with Israel and standing alongside of them?
Well, it's been enormously difficult for Israelis who are now seeking allies in other parts of the world. It is interesting and ironic that you have a Saudi delegation in Israel as we speak. You also have the Saudis, the Egyptians, the Jordanians, the Gulf states operating together to create a defense condominium as a counterweight to the ambitions of the Iranians and the Shia. And what they're saying, in effect, is we want an unregistered member of our team that could provide military guidance and logistics. And they won't mention it publicly, but that nation is Israel. And then you had Putin meet with Netanyahu. Why did they meet? Because on the border, Israeli border, is of course all of these missiles that are bristling with Hezbollah. Hezbollah is controlled by Iran. If in fact Israel has to take out these missiles and has to destroy Hezbollah, there may be Russian troops that are involved. And what Netanyahu said to Putin is, look, we don't want to kill Russians. We don't want to be in a war with you. So understand the terms of engagement. We cannot tolerate Hezbollah with missiles. You understand that? We'll get on well. Putin agreed. So here you have arrangements that are being made between Russia and Israel, between the Gulf states and Israel, between Saudi Arabia and Israel, but not between the United States and Israel. This is truly ironic.
Wow. Wow. All right, let me come back to Trump just for a moment. Part of his policy is that there should be a temporary stay of Muslims coming into the country until we figure out just who they are and properly vet them, and that has to do with the whole immigration. What do you think of that?
I would never, ever use the term Muslim population. I would say those people coming from war-torn regions that have engaged in violence or have experienced violence are people that we want to keep out of the United States until we can vet them properly. I would not use the term Muslim because, as I indicated before, think of the El-Sisis, who should be in the United States. Think of the King of Jordan, who should be in the United States, advocating a position of reformism. So I think it was foolish to use that terminology, but I understand the point and agree with the proposition.
All right. Do you think Trump can win this thing?
I think Trump can win. I think he wins in several ways. One, he keeps his mouth shut when the traps are set, and they will be set time and again. This was the first trap of the Khan family. There will be many others. The Democrats understand this is the way to get him angry. The second thing that has to be done is to concentrate on 5 states: Ohio, Florida, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. That's where the race will be won or lost. Trump wins all of those states, he's the next president of the United States. So concentrate your resources in those 5 states. The others are predetermined. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen in Texas, California, and Florida. Well, Florida I can't tell you, but Texas, New York, and California I can tell you. So again, it's largely a question of how you use your resources. And then last, and I think most important, Trump got to the position he's in largely because of a couple of issues. Immigration was clearly one. The second is this notion that there are people in our economy who've been left behind. He wants to represent them. I think this whole idea of the forgotten American is a powerful, powerful theme. It was used by FDR very effectively. It can be used very effectively by Donald Trump. But use it. Don't get distracted. Don't worry about the traps that are being set by the Democratic Party. Concentrate on the areas that got you to where you are at the moment. And if you do that and do it in 5 states and concentrate your resources in those 5 states, you could be the next president of the United States.
Yeah, basically what you're saying is stay on message, and boy, do we get that. Back to Hillary just for a moment. It just seems like our brain is on tilt that our FBI and Justice Department let her slide by. What do you think of that?
Comey made the case. I mean, if you listen to the first 10 minutes of his speech, and then this was a speech, interestingly, given on July 5th, he said, here are all of the conditions for indictment. And then he said, but you know, I'm not going to indict. He probably realized that if he were to bring the terms of indictment directly to the Justice Department, it would be dismissed. This way, at least he has an opportunity through future Senate investigations to raise the issues. Again, it's very hard to say. I think he made the case effectively. She is careless. She did violate all of the protocols in the State Department. There is no doubt that she violated all of the rules associated with classified material. And most significantly, she was willing to put SAPs on her computer, personal computer. SAPs are special access programs. They're 4 levels above top secret. They involve everything that involves the communications networks and how we penetrate the networks of our enemies. That was SAPs. This is the most sensitive material that you have in the intelligence community. Only 11 people in the United States can read SAPs. She put them on a computer. Now, Comey said, I don't have dispositive evidence that this was hacked. But are you kidding? The most sensitive material that the United States has in its intelligence community on a personal server, not hacked? Of course it was hacked. It was hacked by the Russians, hacked by the Chinese, hacked by the Iranians, hacked by ISIS. Everyone has this information at the moment. It's a disaster for the national security of the United States. Trump may be foolish. Trump may be acting in a rather erratic fashion. But no one can make the claim that Trump has violated the national security of the United States. I can make that claim in the case of Hillary Clinton.
You know, you make a great point here, Dr. London, and I thought it was augmented with the fact that it was a clear setup for Trey Gowdy to ask Comey those direct questions. That pretty much put the case back into the forefront, don't you think?
No question. I mean, I think Trey handled this very, very well. He said, here, is this true or not true? Did all of the lawyers read all of the materials? No, they did not. Did she violate the State Department protocols? Yes, she did. Was there some release of materials that should not have been on a personal computer? Without any question. Or are these classified documents? Yes, they were classified documents. He went down this on a kind of laundry list of all of the violations that have occurred. And in every single case, Comey said she was wrong. But in the end, he said, well, it's insufficient to bring this case to get some prosecutor who would bring this case. Are you kidding? I can get 1,000 prosecutors who would be capable of bringing this case. But again, Comey, I think, did not want to bring it to the attention of the Justice Department.
Dr. London, I got to go. I hate to interrupt you, but let me just say to our viewers and listeners, please go to londoncenter.org or Amazon and look for his book. It's called The Encyclopedia of Militant Islam. You're a delight, sir. Can we get you back sometime soon?
Time. Always a pleasure to be with you. God bless you for your great work.
All right. Thank you. God bless you. Have a great day. All right. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.